Hey, I'm James Kotecki. You're in the C-Space studio, and here with me is Charlotte Jones from BBC Earth Productions, where you are an executive producer. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
I know that you probably spend a lot of your time behind the camera, so we're happy to get
Yes.
you interviewed here.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what BBC Earth Productions is doing. You guys are creating some awesome content.
Yeah, we work with our business partners at BBC Worldwide to create brand extension work, basically, under the Earth brand. The Earth brand is natural history, science, anthropology, space. It's a very, very broad natural science brand and one of their flagship brands. So we create all sorts of consumer-facing experiences that people, consumers, can come and get inspired by. 50% of the world now live in cities. It's time people sort of got told and inspired to go and reconnect with the natural world, and that's what we're there to do.
And there's something like biological, almost primal, about needing to reconnect in that way.
Yeah, and people get lost in their everyday lives. You know, people are too busy paying the bills, you know, sort of a slave to their phone, a slave to the desktop. And actually, you know, it's quite simple. It's quite easy to take a small step and step out and look at the natural world. So we spend an awful lot of time with the stories that we tell, capturing extraordinary little insights. You know, we call it fact and magic. That most of the natural world and the stories that come out of the natural world are better than any book that's been written, better than any film that's been made. And if you can encapsulate a few of those, however small, and sort of put them in front of people, people are amazed and delighted that it's their planet and they're part of it.
It's kind of ironic because of all this technology, people aren't viewing the natural world,
Yes.
and you're using the highest levels of technology to get them back into the natural world.
Yeah.
Because I know you're doing things like virtual reality, for example. Can you talk to me about some of the things that you're doing there?
Well, virtual reality is a really good tool for us because, you know, it takes people to somewhere else. And that's what we've spent 50, 60 years actually doing, is making films that can take people to go and see bits of the planet they'll never ever see, or see creatures or people that they'll never ever see. So virtual reality is great. We access all these places with the contacts that we have around the world. We create films and then people can experience that wherever they want, sitting at their desk, looking at their phone in a headpiece. So for us, you know, with the work that we've done in immersive media, from big screen, big frame format films, we were really well placed to pick up the technical and creative opportunities that VR offers. You know, immersive experience with the use of sound, really well designed audio, 360 audio, and beautiful imagery, which is quite complicated. But we work with a lot of very, very high-end designers and artists who can help us create seamless worlds. So yeah, it's a real sort of good fit for us.
And what are some of those lessons of VR that you know, but that other people who maybe are making VR content or other types of content like this may not know because they don't have that same experience?
I think somebody once said to us, make it short and good. And that's really worth bearing in mind. You know, these things have to be good. We're at a point in this platform's evolution that if the consumer, if the sort of mainstream don't see good content, you're going to disappear into the trough of despondency, they call it, on an evolutionary...
Sounds like you don't want to be there.
No, we're not there yet. But on an innovation sort of graph, you have this huge immediate take-up of anything new. And then when everybody's pouring out a range of quality of content, the consumer, the mainstream, will look at it and sort of think, is this really what I think it is? And suddenly you've got everybody slightly having a downer on it as the new format. They're in the trough of despondency. So there's a very active movement between VR creators to create good quality content, and you can. Don't worry about how long it is. Worry about the experience. The experience could be 10 seconds long. And the other thing which I think is now coming out, stories are being developed. People have got to grips with the technology of how to stitch stuff, how to film it. It's all very consumer facing. It's all very easy in its bare sort of basic form. So we're now looking at how to tell stories. And the one thing that I think is going to be really, really important is to plug into emotion. And some of the VR experiences that I've seen that plug into emotion really, really are so much more engaging because you're totally immersed in it.
Give me a behind-the-scenes technique for how do you actually tap into that emotional appeal and hit somebody at that nerve center?
Well, I suppose it can be many things. I mean, I can remember seeing a film which somebody else who I work with had made. And it was filmed in Africa. It was actually made for the climate summit in Paris. And you're standing on a well in a village with a whole load of villagers. And obviously the importance is all about the fact that they've got to try and keep this village going and they need water. And you're looking down into their well, and suddenly I saw this man looking into my eyes. And it was really arresting. It really shocked me that he was looking at me, and I thought I was there. Just that sort of straight connection between a human being and me really took me to the edge of that well. So things like that, things like use of sound. You know, sound is something that human beings are absolutely primitively keyed into. It's how we don't get eaten. And you know, we're all our sensory inputs are much more sophisticated than we think they are. You know, we sort of deal with the everyday and we're blocking out background noise and everything else. But actually, we have evolved to listen to the sounds which are going to threaten our lives. So in terms of creating natural history adventure content, you can play with that really well, and with very well designed 360 sound effects and beautiful imagery, you can really move somebody to be, you know, sort of fearful, believe that wolves are out there ready to come and get them. So yeah, it's plugging into who we are as humans, I think.
You're tapping into something, you've used the word primal a couple of times. And I mean, you're wielding a power here that is enormous. And it seems to me that we're just at the beginning of this, because the technology will continue to get better, headsets will become lighter and more ubiquitous. Have you thought about the psychological ramifications of a future where we are experiencing more and more things in VR and believing that actually believing that we're in other places?
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot about, I was watching a film recently online about a gamer who was gaming a lot in VR, who had actually sort of lost that separation between the two worlds. And he was sort of like a recovering VR gamer, which seems quite crazy, but we're there. But I think that, you know, we're still very much on the nursery slopes. We're still at the point where for VR and AR to become very convincing, very seamless, very accessible pieces of content and entertainment is going to take quite a time yet. And I think as humans, we will evolve those understandings of how we fit it into our daily lives. I think there is a massive responsibility we have. I saw a piece of content which was created by a guy in his bedroom in the north of England. He took a whole load of photographs of a graveyard and a churchyard. He mapped them, he sort of created the 360 world, and then you can move around it like Street View. You can sort of move along the churchyard, but because it's high-res stills imagery, it is gobsmackingly beautiful quality. And I was in it for possibly 5 minutes, and when I took the headset off, I was seriously shocked that I was actually sitting amongst a team of graphic designers at the time. And that was quite a sort of basic, it was only me just in a churchyard. But if it's convincing, you really do get disorientated.
So we've already got all of that with just sight and sound. Have you looked into, even at the experimental level, for other senses? Touch, taste, smell?
Yeah, we've looked into haptic, and I think for us it will be big. I mean, at the moment, the platforms that we're working with haven't given us the opportunity. You know, on a commercial level, we're not actually working on any particular films with haptic elements in them. But of course, we're very well aware that this is something that we'd desperately like to get our hands on, you know, and I think especially with the adventure format, which is an area that we work on, you know, that's something that would work really well.
So you're on the cutting edge of this. If we have this conversation in 5 years, from your vantage point on the cutting edge, how much further along are we actually going to be? How fast is this moving?
I think it's moving fast, but I think we're actually, you know, I go to a lot of conferences to try and gauge how this is moving, where we are on that gauge, you know, do we need to up our game, and what are the latest tricks? You know, as I've said, it's a very collaborative landscape. People are helping each other here. I think it's going to be a slow progress, because I think we've got consumer-facing kit, which means that people can reiterate this stuff and find out and work out where it sits. Is it a training tool? Is it an entertainment tool? Is it a gaming tool? I think in 5 years' time, we'll still be on those slopes. We'll have better 3D live action capture. We'll have more extraordinary stories to tell in that space. But I think it's still going to depend, a lot of it is going to depend on unifying platforms and streaming, so that for the consumer it's not as diversified and fragmented as it is at the moment. I mean, at the conference centre yesterday there are a squillion headsets, and for a consumer that's very confusing because you don't know what you're getting. So I think there's got to be a lot of shakedown in that area.
And for 2017, what are the stories that you're most excited to tell this year?
I'm really excited to look at AR, because I know that that's a bit of a cop-out answer because, we've done VR, but AR is spectacular, and again, it's an overlay on the natural world. And because what I do is I sort of, we roam the world sort of collecting extraordinary stories and sharing them. I think another opportunity to overlay either information or experiences in your daily lives is something which would be really extraordinary for us.
I was in Boy Scouts, and I can imagine some kind of AR overlay on glasses when I'm out in the woods hiking that tells me what birds are, what plants are poisonous, or things like that. Where I am
all sorts
specifically.
Of things. It's got a long way to go, but I'm sure it'll, like everything else, there's a lot of interest in it this year, which was great. It's got a long way to go, though.
Final thoughts as we head toward the end of this interview?
I think, CES has been an amazing experience just from the range of people who are here, and people are very happy to share their insights and offer, sort of ask you in to come and have a look at what they're developing. It's a bit of a sort of incredible number of people here, and I just wish I had longer to spend more time looking around.
Charlotte Jones is the executive producer of BBC Earth Productions. Thank you for joining me here in the C-Space studio.
Thank you.
I'm James Kotecki. Keep it right here for more great C-Space studio content.